So how do I decide the composition of groups? I started out doing self-select, and that did not go well.
Allowing students to self-select opens up to the possibility that students will show bias in selection towards underrepresented minority groups. And that especially we don't want to happen.
The reason I did not let students organize themselves into groups is that I really wanted students to work with people they didn't know. And I thought that if they worked with students they didn't know, that it would deepen their understanding of anthropology because they would get to know their colleagues, get to know their peers in the classroom setting. And this might make them more comfortable during the days when we didn't do group work and we had discussions, we had group-based discussions.
Just turn our seats around and whoever's next to me is in our group, you know? And I think people do stick in the same groups. Sometimes I'll go ahead and divide them up and have them get with people they haven't worked with. Sometimes I'll pass out numbers or something along those lines and have it be random.
Students need to be able to work with whomever they get assigned to. Right. And we've tried to set that up as an expectation for them.
We talk about generic kind of teamwork, communication skills, things that they would have in the real world setting. We want them to be able to know how to work in interdisciplinary teams.
I think another thing that we've learned about teaming is to be pretty forthright and direct ourselves.
Some students are not comfortable speaking up in a group. I wasn't when I was first in school. So I think letting them know, that way they can kind of prepare themselves mentally for what goes into that versus sitting and listening to someone talk can be really beneficial too.
And so I think those differences in skill sets are vitally important, and I think they kind of rise to the top in group settings.
Now, sometimes you do get cultural conflicts where some people really think that they're supposed to behave a certain way or they're supposed to do certain things, and maybe that doesn't align well with the rest of the group. And you might have to meet with the group and you might have to talk about reasonable expectations or compromise.
In each of the classes that I teach where we do group work, we spend at the beginning of the semester a day on kind of cultural training and how to work with individuals of different cultures and different backgrounds, different ethnicities. And so, you know, we have individuals that work differently, and so we want to make sure that we can all communicate fairly and equally in our groups.
Because when students are doing problem solving, like ethnographic methods, in a group setting, they need to have someone there to kind of help them through the process and to point out areas where they could do better, or they could find new questions, or you know, have new discoveries. And I think leaving them to do the work on their own for an entire class period isn't what students envisioned. I think they actually really enjoy engagement with the faculty member.
A lot of the students seem to be overwhelmed at the beginning of the semester. I'm going to have to fit this project in as well. And so helping the students find a project that they can actually complete within the time frame and that's meaningful to them and meaningful to the community.
In that first semester, maybe this is a change between first and second semester, I wanted to be so supportive of whatever project any student mentioned that I would just stamp the approval on it and say, great, and you want to pick your 3 buddies to be on your team with you? Awesome. And this semester I said, whoa. This project isn't meaningful. This project isn't challenging. This project, it doesn't meet the criteria. You're going to struggle with it all semester. So just being more honest about my own feedback up front, which hopefully modeled giving direct feedback to them as well. And also cautioning them about choosing buddies and roommates as their leadership team, and said instead really be thoughtful about who brings the talent, the expertise to the team that you really need.
And it's great at the end of these group sessions to be able to process and talk about what happened. And then students are like, oh, I had no idea what we were going to do in this situation, but so-and-so had a great idea and we went with it and it worked out great. Or, oh, we couldn't have done this without so-and-so's ability to write or to do the assessments. And it's great to be able to see the students realizing their own weaknesses and the strengths that other people have, as well as to be able to have those students realize, my peers recognize some strengths in me.
If all of the group work you ever do is at the end of the course, that's problematic because you haven't given students the opportunity to have scaffolded learning along the way in the groups.
So I also use a couple group member evaluations throughout the semester. So I started using just one at the end. and each student would evaluate the other students in their group. It was part of their grade to perform the evaluation. And although that was nice for me to see, it didn't help them because the problems, if there were problems, were weeks ago.
So for each of the exercises and group work that we did, I would put the students in a new group each time. Sometimes I would mix the groups up more frequently if I noticed that a dynamic wasn't particularly productive.
I typically use no more than 5 people per group. I've done some semesters where I had a small enough class I could do 3 people per group, and that worked really well for me. I found even with 4 or 5, there's one student who's kind of quiet and doesn't participate, but when it's 3 students, they all seem to contribute.
For groups of 4 and 5, we'd have pretty good success. 5 is pushing it a little bit. It can be easier for somebody to fall by the wayside a little bit in 5 than it is in 4. But the other thing you have to contend with is the fact that not everybody may be involved in every aspect of the group's work.
You definitely have to do some sort of out-of-class assignment that they bring in to class based on the reading or whatever material, even if it's previous lecture material, just so they come in prepared. If they're not prepared, if no one in the group is prepared, you get nothing. They have nothing to talk about.